The BodyTalk system has many techniques, but easily the most important technique for the average person is the very first technique we teach in the BodyTalk system in our basic modules, and that is the technique for balancing the cortices. Now, balancing the cortices is essentially saying we are balancing the brain and maximizing its function. You see, one of the problems in our society is that the brain is an electrical circuit. It's not only neurons passing back and forward between the hemispheres and between all the parts of the brain, it is also electromagnetic frequencies and electrons and quarks and many other electronic type factors that have all got to balance themselves out in order for the brain to function properly. And in our society, with all the stress that's around, with all the interference patterns of radio waves, electromagnetic frequency power lines and things like this, we are finding that the average brain is being profoundly affected by this. It's literally blowing fuses, as it were, and this causes malfunctioning of the brain. So the average brain is just not working anywhere near at its normal capacity. When you consider that the brain is one of the greatest computers there is, and is certainly superior to any man-made computer, it seems strange that so many people in our society have so many learning disorders and attention deficit disorders and other malfunctions that really shouldn't be there in such a beautiful piece of equipment such as the brain. The Cortices is designed to address that because it is a technique that basically causes a correction of those blown fuses, as it were. It re-establishes the connections and the synchronization of those connections between the hemispheres of the brain in order to cause the brain to function better. This has many immediate effects. A, it causes the brain to function better. B, it has a very strong effect on our stress levels and the way our body handles stress. For example, the amygdala system, which handles the fight-flight mechanism, suffers very, very badly whenever the brain is malfunctioning. And as a result, our response to situations within the world and different problems that we have is often abnormal or overreactive. Or very often, instead of even handling our stresses that are going on within our family and our work and things like that, we instead go through what we call a shutdown mode or imploding mode, where we send the stresses internally. And of course, later on in life, they come out as heart attacks and irritable bowel syndrome and stomach ulcers and immune disorders and endocrine disorders and so on. And even more important than that is on a day-to-day basis, when the brain is malfunctioning, we find that our memory is poor, our learning and reading abilities are poor. We have a lot of problems with attention and so-called attention deficit disorder because there's so much input into the brain, and the normal filters of the brain when you're under stress just do not work properly. They don't filter out all the unnecessary stuff, so the brain gets overloaded, and therefore it goes into a shutdown mode or switch off mode, and hence we're saying we've got poor attention or attention deficit. These are serious problems encountering society at this stage. We've also know that when the brain is like this, the immune system can't work well. And that means that the immune system doesn't target a lot of the pathological conditions that are going on in our body in a chronic way. So we can have chronic viruses, chronic parasites, chronic bacteria in our system that will lead to things like chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia and many other forms of aches and pains in the body. And these will stay there for years and years, because the immune system has simply learned to ignore them because it's not able to handle the stress of having to take them on. The same goes with our hormonal system and the whole sympathetic parasympathetic balance of the general nervous system. Now, the simple technique of the Cortices treatment in BodyTalk is simply to form a bridge between the two hemispheres and reconnect everything, and basically we could say rewire or reconnect the wiring. That's in simple terms. There is a sound scientific basis to the technique, and you could certainly explore this if you want by going on to our website at bodytalksystem.com. where you'll find a lot of information and a lot of scientific information behind what we do, as well as all the other courses and all the other techniques that we can teach. However, the BodyTalk System and the International BodyTalk Association decided that the correction of the brain on a routine basis is really, really important in our society right now. The stress levels are too high. When the stress levels get very high, the implosion of that stress leads to violence, it leads to fear, it leads to poor decision making, and it leads to all the things we're seeing out there in the world right now. Because when you're imploding all this stress, you're going to lash out. You're going to lash out from fear, with anger, and with abnormal behavior patterns. Now, what we have instigated is a program where we're trying to educate the public in how to do something for themselves. In other words, take responsibility and do something proactive to help maintain the functioning of their brain so that they can deal with the day-to-day living, which is really quite a challenge. The Cortices Technique only takes about 1 minute to do. It is completely safe, it is completely non-invasive. And we suggest that you do it on a regular basis. Because if you do it just once, you'll see some changes, for sure. There will be sometimes minor, sometimes major changes. But the key about the Cortices Technique is the accumulative effect. In other words, if you do it on a daily basis, regularly, then what happens is, little bit by little bit, you instigate a progressive repair of the brain and a systematic rewiring of the brain. So that over a month, 2 months, 3 months, you'll see this gradual, constant improvement. And then you'll get to a stage where by doing it, you'll be able to maintain that much greater state of health. It will affect every aspect of your health, not only in yourself, but in your family and friends, because you should be doing the techniques on them or training them how to do it. So at this stage, the International BodyTalk Association has authorized all its members to teach any member of the public this particular technique. And that's what this particular video is about, because I'm going to show you the technique right now. Simply what we're having to do is form a bridge between the two hemispheres, and we need an electrical field to do it, and our hands are an electrical field. That when we put our two hands together, there is a north pole and a south pole, and we set up an electromagnetic field between the two. The same as when we have the two hemispheres not communicating well. If we form a bridge between the two hemispheres, and then we instigate a change in that bridge with what we call a standing wave. Now, a standing wave is simply a particular form of wave. It can be called a standing wave, a soliton, or in geography it's called a tsunami. That standing wave is created by a tapping process. And if we form a bridge and tap the brain and then tap the sternum, which activates the heart brain, and you may or may not know, but the heart itself is a very, very important set of neurons that also has electromagnetic frequencies and plays a major role in the stabilization of the brain. So what we're going to do is simply systematically cover the whole brain, which means the whole head, and bridge all the two hemispheres. And the way we start is we start at the back. And simply by putting our back hand, the back of the head, the thumb is on the actual neck, the rest of the hand is on the skull. And it's in the midline there. This is causing a bridge. And then we're just going to simply tap the head for a few seconds, like so, making sure that we're tapping with fingers either side of the midline. That's important. We don't just tap on one side or the other, we spread our fingers. And then we're going to tap the chest, just for a few seconds like that. We do that a couple of times. Now we're going to move our hand up the head to the next position so that we're systematically covering everything. And again, in that position, we're going to tap and we're going to tap. Then we're going to move forward again. So we're gradually covering the whole center line, and we're going to tap and tap. Or we can tap back here if we want. And we're going to tap. And then finally we're going to do the front section. And we're going to tap, and we're going to tap. A couple of times like this. Now what we've done is the two major cortexes, we've balanced those two sections there. But what we haven't covered is the side bits. So now we have to put our hands on either side. The problem comes now that we have to tap. But we can set up the circuitry, and by setting up the circuitry and establishing the circuitry, we can temporarily now let go, and we can tap, and put our hand back. Then we can tap, and we can tap, and put our hand back. Hold that just for a few seconds and let go. Now, what we've done now is we have started the process of re-establishing the circuitry in the brain and correcting that left-right imbalance. If we do this on a regular basis, as I said, daily, or if we're under a lot of stress, if you're having a really bad day, you can do it several times a day. Because what will happen is, if you teach this to your children, they'll find that if they go to school and they're under stress, or they're going to do an exam, or you're going to do a sports performance or something like that, they can simply do their cortices, and it will immediately settle them down, de-stress them, and have them thinking clearly. We have many situations of children in schools where the teacher has taught the class how to do the technique, and the kids all do it before they start the class. Within a week or so, the kids are reminding the teacher to make sure they do it, because they notice such a difference. And the teachers are noticing a huge difference in the behavior of the students and in their learning curve. So it is very important. And we invite you to do that technique on a regular basis. Just do it every day. Get into the habit. Brush your teeth, do your cortices. Or wake up, do your cortices, get out of bed. But get into the habit. And if you can get in the habit of doing it, it will make a difference. And if you want to find out more, please come to our website, BodyTalkSystem.com. Thank you.